So if you've watched my channel at all, it's no secret that while I had fun with Scream 5, I didn't think Scream 6 needed to exist at all. But the sixth installment is here, so I saw it. Is it worth checking out? The survivors of the Ghostface killings leave Woodsboro behind and start a fresh chapter in New York City, only to find the threat is far from over. So the story picks up following the events of Woodsboro, where Sister Sam and Tara survived a Ghostface attack, along with a couple of their friends, and now they've moved to New York and are attending college. And in a not-so-unexpected turn of events, a slasher wearing the Ghostface mask begins to torment and hunt the friends. Okay, so I had way more fun with this than I ever thought I would. While the premise is very routine, the surprise for me came in the form of the suspense and the gruesomeness of the kills. And sure, I expected some gore and an absurd amount of violence, otherwise this would have really been just a very lackluster slasher. But what is shown actually surprised me for the level of brutality that some characters experience. I think at this point, a lot of the story arcs are rinse and repeat, where our characters are trying to move on from the trauma of their past, but then a new killer emerges to haunt and torment them, intent on ending as many lives along the way as possible. Now, there will be a boatload of potential suspects, some misdirections, hopefully a lot of doubt, and ideally a killer whose motivations feel earned and legitimate. And this checks all of those boxes. The cast is fun, not only bringing back some characters from the last film, like Jasmine Savoy Brown and Mason Gooding, but then pulling in franchise stars like Courtney Cox and Hayden Panettiere. And then we get new additions that help round out the friends list, and who also add to the potential suspects and victims. There's Devin Nakota, Josh Segarra, Jack Champion, and Liana Liberato. Plus, veteran actor Dermot Mulroney has a large role as a detective working the case, so the cast is fairly large without being overwhelming. Now, the movie works well when it's being self-aware, calling out shortcomings and ideas that are used in other slasher films, including the Scream franchise. It's letting us know that they know on some level that they're part of this world, and because of that, certain rules have to be followed. The visuals and dialogue nods to just previous installments I think is great, not only for nostalgia, but also as a wink and a nod to show that this generation is going to do things differently, that they've learned from what's happened prior, and they're better for it, even if it didn't actually happen to them. The movie's just a bit over 2 hours long, and there are moments here and there that the time was felt. And many of the times, these are in the quieter parts of the story. But these downtimes are also needed to allow us as the audience to let our guard down for just a second so we can relax. So then also the story then can resume with an intense fight and stab session. Now, I'd mentioned that I was surprised by the brutality and the gruesomeness of the kills in this. And I certainly applaud the filmmakers for how much of the violence they actually show. There are some times when Ghostface gets stabby, and good grief, the camera is right there to watch the blade go into somebody. A few times I chortled out loud because the violence was so abrupt, but it did put a smile on my face because this is exactly why I go to see a movie like this. It's a slasher, so the killer better be slashing. And Ghostface certainly did a lot of slashing and gashing and stabbing and shooting. The killer is ruthless, and that adds a lot of anxiety to the pace. There's this constant driving force whenever the killer's on screen, pushing up the suspense with deadly urgency. Now, with all of the violence and the big cast of characters, not everyone is going to be safe. And I'm not even going to tell you who lives or dies, but there are moments in this film, just as there were in number 5, when the characters have some really powerful protection. People get some injuries and wounds that they really shouldn't be able to walk away from. And yet they do. This is both noticeable and bothersome because sometimes characters feel like they could just be invincible. I don't want that. I want any and all of the characters to be able to experience peril, that there are risks being undertaken that could reduce the number of characters that we're following. And I'm not saying that every character has this protection from harm, but there are distinct times when a character should not be up and walking around after the type of wound that they suffer. And there are also times when a character with a weapon just doesn't use it when they should. And that's frustrating. But again, it points to plot and character protection, allowing the sequence to continue so that the desired outcome can be achieved. And yeah, I know that's vague, and I'm not pointing to actual specifics because to do that names characters and motivations, and that then is spoilers, which I'm not getting into. Now, for the mystery angle of this, I was mostly caught by surprise. There was a line that clued me into something, but it didn't make me outright confident that I had figured it out. It was just a niggling supposition that had started to form. But the reveal was pretty much a surprise, and I appreciated that I wasn't able to figure it out. As far as the characters themselves go, while this is mostly focused on Sam, who's played by Melissa Barrera, the others share most of the screen time evenly. Even Jenna Ortega, who does take some prominence here and there for the story, but she still doesn't have nearly as much to do as the character of Sam does. And I think the cast continues to really work well together, maintaining the snark and sarcasm that has always accompanied the franchise, creating chuckles and laughs just amidst the horrors and tension. And outside of Barrera, I think Jasmine Savoy Brown and Mason Gooding are big standouts in this, bringing a lot of charm and some levity to the scenes, but also making the friends feel more like family, especially since there still remains some tension between Sam and Tara from the previous film. Now, as family aspect, it also helps to shape the narrative and is a constant theme throughout, creating a huge sense of dread surrounding the core characters for fear that any one of them could be the killer or could be harmed. So even though when this movie was announced, I was disappointed and I didn't think it should be made, I was very pleasantly surprised at how much fun I had while I was watching. There's an enormous amount of thrills and unease that's present, creating an atmosphere of urgent dread that is then paid off by a lot of brutal kills. The actors convincingly portray fearful and tormented characters, but ones that are willing to use their heads and fight back rather than cower in a corner, which then creates a lot of exciting action and mystique for the plot. The runtime is noticeable, and there's a lot of protection the characters receive to just shield them from harm at various points. But all in all, the misdirection pays off, creating a narrative that is both suspenseful and earned, while also delivering spectacularly gruesome deaths. If you're a fan of the franchise, I think you'll really enjoy this latest entry. And if you're like me and you weren't looking forward to it, you may find yourself just as surprised as I was. I mean, it's far from a perfect film, but it's still a lot of fun. There's not really any sex, no nudity, a ton of profanity, and then just an incredible amount of brutal and gory violence. I give Scream 6 4 out of 5 couches. So are you a fan of the Scream series? Which one is your favorite? And also, do you hope they continue, or should this just be the final one? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.